911 operators of Reddit. What was the most vague call you've ever received? I work in bank security but receive alert line calls from bank staff, which is essentially the same as 911 operators would receive. I had a call at midnight and it was this guy who started off by saying, "Is this a secure line? I think they're listening." Yes sir, this line is secure. Okay, I just can't be too careful. Listen, I think they're onto me. Weird things are happening at work. I'll get weird pop-ups on my computer, on all of the computers. I don't know what to do. Okay, so just take a breath and talk me through what's going on. Strange things. I don't know. I'm not sure. Too many coincidences, they don't make sense. I think my bosses are planning something, but I won't contact the police. Why won't you contact the police? I think they're involved, and they won't listen to me anyway. Something's happening but I don't know what it is yet. Then I heard in the background, "What the hell are you doing down here? Come back to bed. Give me the phone." He argued for a second and gave over the phone. "Hi, sorry about this, I'm Frank's wife. I don't know what he's been telling you but he's just very stressed at the moment. Don't worry about anything he said. He told me he was going to get water and I found him downstairs calling you guys. I'll make sure he's okay. Thanks, bye." Okay. Take care of him. Bye. Was very surreal. Looks like they got to Frank. Wait a second. Frank? But Frank doesn't have a wife. Not 911 but search and rescue radio in Alaska. Late one evening in a winter blizzard, I got the call, "Coast Guard, we are going over, that's it." I never heard from the ship again. I did however find some other helpful souls and background info. After being in the water almost 6 hours in 34°F water, we picked them up. All four lived. One of my most intense nights ever. How? I was under the impression that 34 degrees for 6 hours was almost certain death, but they lived, and someone found them on that vague of a call. I mean, how? They had survival suits. It was brutal out though. The helicopter had to keep going back because of ice on the rotor. I was able to get a few mariners that had seen them earlier in the day and were able to get an approx location from there. The C-130 aircraft did search patterns and such. This doesn't make it sound very dramatic, but when you can only listen to fishermen and the pilots over the radio, it is nerve-wracking. Some rambling followed by a clear "there's a bomb on the train" followed by a click. Middle of the night when it's supposed to be quiet, and I was only working there for about a month at that point, as a railway police dispatcher. Definitely got me from feeling groggy to fully panicked in half a second. Pulled out the emergency procedure guideline for bombs. Got started on all steps to start shutting down the entire division as a precaution and started pulling the call details. Told my one colleague about the call so he could take over the other inbound calls. Started to pick up the phone to call up other departments and the inbound phone rings again. My colleague, who was much older and experienced, told me, "Hold up, let me take this call." A few seconds pass and he screams out, "Is this Jeremy?" He waits a few seconds and slams the phone down. Oh yeah, that's Jeremy. He's actually a frequent caller who's institutionalized. Sometimes he gets away and runs off to the nurse's station and calls us. Happens every now and then. Cross-reference the phone number and log the call under Jeremy. Classic Jeremy. We used to have a Jonathan who was a frequent flyer at the state hospital. During his many travels from one psych hospital to the next, he somehow managed to gather the phone numbers to the female units of every psych facility in the metropolitan area. I worked for at least 5 hospitals where Jonathan called the female payphones and tried to talk the women into going out with him. Psych patients are certainly creative. My mother used to be a 999 UK 911 operator. She says the Vegas was heavy breathers, as you couldn't tell whether it was someone injured who couldn't speak or just a pervert. We would have the same thing with perverts calling the nurse's station. When you would hang up on the heavy breathers, they would inevitably call back. We then discovered that by having one of the male nurses answer the phone, the perverts would hang up immediately. No longer a dispatcher, but was for 15 years. I answered a 911 call from a cell phone that only indicated a sector direction the call was coming from and the tower that the call was bouncing off of. Basically no valid location information. Initially it sounded like a bug dial situation, but I stayed on the line a little longer trying to refresh the call for better location information. As I was listening, it sounds like a loud TV and some muffled noises in the background, so I stayed on longer than I would have. I was finally able to narrow the location down to about 3 football fields and searched in-house records for the phone number. At this point there was still no communication except in the background. Then I heard what was one single clear call for help. I couldn't tell if it was the TV or a person though. I already entered a vague call to check the area and kept updating officers with further info. Eventually we narrowed it down to one road that had one house surrounded by businesses, so officers went to the house. Found that there was a teenage boy and a little brother or sister that were held tied up by parents. I tried to search for the news report but can't recall enough details. Thankfully I didn't give up, won the call too soon, and the children were rescued. There's a game on Steam called 911 Operator where you have to handle all emergency vehicles in the city as well as calls. Sometimes they'll act like they're ordering a pizza and you can ask if them yes or no questions to figure out what they need, police and or ambulance, armed people in the house, etc. Other times there are calls where they can't talk but you can get them to answer with button presses and trace their call. It's kind of eerie but kind of neat to learn about. It's a fun game, along the lines of Plague Inc. There was a story probably 2 years or so back where a wife girlfriend and her kids were being held hostage by her SO. The girl let her order pizza on the smartphone for the kids from Domino's or Pizza Hut. I'm sure it was one of those two. Anyway, at the end of ordering there's an option where you can put in any kind of extra information. I imagine it was made for drivers to get info like call when here, can't hear, doorbell or whatever. Well, this clever woman was never after the pizza. She used it to say 911 call police, not a joke or something along those lines. Police showed up and kicked the door in and it potentially saved lives. Just took this one. There's a guy here acting weird. What do you mean? What's he doing? I don't know. He's just weird. I don't know the definition of weird. Well, what's weird mean to you? It's not illegal to be weird. He's looking over his shoulder. He shouldn't be here. He's on public property. Anyone can be there. It turned out the guy may have been a crackhead but wasn't using or bothering anyone. The caller just didn't want him around. He's just standing there, menacingly. Wee woo wee woo wee woo. Quick, hide in the mailbox. I was a police dispatcher and 911 operator for over 5 years. This started as an extremely vague call and turned into easily the funniest thing I can remember from those 5 years. TLDR at the end. I've added some near verbatim quotes from the caller. This call was so wacky I wrote about it right after it happened, and I had the file still sitting in my Google Drive. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. I'm about to take you all for a ride. I worked in a very small department in rural Texas. There were a few suburb areas of our city, but mostly rural. The city encompassed over 23 square miles, with only 10,000 residents at most, and a department with less than 30 employees total. I was on duty as the only dispatcher, working with 2 officers for the whole night. So it's just me, and my 2 officers. The phone rings, and here's what I hear. I'm in a white trailer house, and I'm the only one still up out here. And I've been hearing this stuff all night long for the last 2 nights, and it's been getting louder. And I'm sick of it. I asked the caller his address, which he gave me. I tried to clarify if it was the east or west of the street he said, and this was his reply. See, I just moved here, and I don't know. I'm the only one up at this time of night, and I'm the only one out here. I asked him what the noise was and if he could describe it. Well, it sounds like something is trying to take my window off, and it's been getting louder like something is trying to come into my house. This was a big trigger to up the response. I let my officers know this detail, because if someone is actively trying to come into his house it's a very urgent situation. The next question was how long ago he last heard this noise. If it was seconds ago, that's very different than having heard it an hour ago. Well, I've been hearing it tonight, and last night, and it's getting louder. I tried for clarity, asking when he last heard it. I asked if it was about 5 minutes ago or half an hour ago. He replied yeah to this definitely not yes or no question. After one more push, he said it was about 5 minutes ago. Keep in mind, during this whole process, I've already got officers on the way. They're getting updates on what he's telling me and are probably as confused as I am. But they know that not telling them more means I'm still trying to figure it out myself. The caller continued to talk, finally giving a very important clue. And they put me all the way out here. And I'm with MHMRA. MHMRA, or the Mental Health and Mental Retardation Authority, worked with patients struggling with mental illness or disability. It then dawned on me the struggles he was dealing with, and the potential illness that could be contributing to this. That's when he hit me with a question I literally never thought I'd be asked over a 911 call. It hit me like a wall. He first says, "Sir, can I ask you a question?" Of course, I said yes. Then he asked me, "I want to know, is there such thing as zombies?" That was absolutely what he asked me. I can still hear it in my head. His shaky voice and genuine concern. He didn't know the answer. In a moment of crisis, I'm trying to keep him as calm as possible until my officers get there. But I don't want to challenge his worldview. I don't want to say that's crazy and him be escalated when they arrive. So, I got practical. This was my response. Well, I don't think there is. I mean, I'm not an expert on such things, but I've certainly not seen any zombies and in my own experience. He literally said, "Oh, that's such a relief." The more I talked to him, the more this all made sense. It was also sad. This man was clearly suffering from some form of mental illness, possibly schizophrenia. After some discussion, mostly killing time until my officers arrived. The department was small, but they were coming from across town, and I wanted to keep him as calm as possible until they got there. He then moves back to our previous discussion and asks another question I never thought I'd have to answer. "How do you think zombies would go about breaking into your house?" I had to answer, so I just went for it. Well, I'm not sure, but I don't think they'd be very good at pulling off a window or breaking in like that. I suppose they'd just try and barge their way in, or something. But I'm not an expert. I just wouldn't think they're the most dexterous of beings. Fortunately, my officers arrived right about this point. I asked him to go answer the door and talk to them. From talking to my officers later, the circumstances got a lot more clear. This man was suffering from mental illness, likely including symptoms like hallucinations. He was from downtown Houston area, but through MHMRA had gotten a chance to stay in this trailer out in the country. It being a rural area, there are sounds of wildlife. These aren't sounds he is accustomed to. This man had a few friends over earlier in the night, and they'd started talking about zombies, Bigfoot, and all sorts of things in that realm. They let this man, supposedly their friend, buy into believing these things were real. Then, knowing about his issues and that he wasn't on his meds, they left. And he was left at home for his mind to torture him. The officers were able to bring him back down to reality, one even blankly asking him, "Do you really think Bigfoot is real?" He quickly backed down with a, "I guess not." They urged him to take his meds as they were prescribed and checked around the house to make him feel safe. Fortunately, it was a happy ending for a crazy situation. That started as the most confusing of a call I've had, and turned into a story I'll truly never forget. TLDR. I worked as a police dispatcher. A person called and was hearing noises, but had trouble describing them all when they happened. Later he asked me if zombies were real, and how they'd go about breaking into his home. We later found out he had mental illness and was off his meds. 911 operator, at a 40 officer department. Took a 911 call, female caller, get police over, click. I attempted call back, no answer, straight to voicemail. Looked up history with the phone number in our report system. And neighboring city had contact with someone using that number just 2 months prior. Neighboring city does a check at the home and finds a vehicle that had gotten away from a police pursuit from our city earlier in the night. We go to the location and recover the vehicle, while the local department takes the person identified as the driver into custody on their local charges. Weird that it all stemmed from a less than 3-second phone call. That's why they always, at least try to, teach us in Poland that whenever you are calling emergencies, the first thing you say is the address. No hello, no get XXX, just say the address first, just in case something happens. My stepdad's fire station once got a call asking whether you should throw salt or sugar on a fire to put it out. I'm not sure if the call was transferred or they'd called the station directly. He asked why and they responded that her and her husband disagreed on it. He asked if they had a fire, and they said well, yes, but they were just wondering which to use. He asked where, and they said oh, we're just behind the station to the east. He looked over and could see flames rolling out of their kitchen window. For anyone curious, the answer is sand. You throw sand to put out a fire. Salt might work in a pinch if you happen to have enough, but whatever you do not throw sugar on fire, because it burns. Edit. Sounds like baking soda is also useful for putting out fires, though I've never tried it myself. It's hard to say, we get vague calls all the time and people hardly answer when you call back. Mostly send the police, and that's it. Luckily sometimes people will say they shot him or something along those lines then hang up. My favorite type of caller, you don't need the address, just fucking send the cops already. But my parents were once a vague call on my phone. I was driving them home from a wedding because they were way too inebriated to drive. At one point my BF texted me, so I handed my dad my phone to text him back. Somehow he managed to hit the emergency services button. Then yes. So they pick up, and I hear dad go oh, then he hangs up. So he gives the phone to my mom, and emergency services call back. I hear her say very loudly hello? No, I'm fine. And I being what? Coerced? Knew it. At this point I've pulled over and wrestled the phone from her, and then explained the situation. I felt so bad for the operator. Not to sound insensitive in this very serious thread, but I can only imagine the operator hearing a clearly drunk caller followed by a faint mom. Mom, give me my phone, give my phone back, mom. Former volunteer EMT here. We kept getting toned out one afternoon for stomach pain. Took forever to get a volunteer crew together to respond to this call. Turned out to be a middle schooler with a gunshot wound to the abdomen. The kid that called 911 didn't want to tell the dispatcher that he accidentally shot his friend with his dad's unsecured gun. This is fucked up. Poor kids. Was he okay in the end? The kid that was shot did survive, but a lot of us first responders felt absolutely horrible for not responding quicker. Had the information given to the dispatcher been complete, or had she been able to elicit more information from the kid, the response would have been so much faster than a response for vague stomach pain. We were never able to get any follow-up on the situation because it involved minors and quite possibly a crime. Not 911, but funny AF from one of my friends that is a ranger. They received a call from a guy who got lost in the mountains. They asked him, "Can you tell us where you are?" He said, "Next to a tree." He was not kidding. Weird part is asking a lost person where they are. If they got lost on a hiking trail, then saying what trail could tell searchers where to look. Same if they happen to be by a creek or river. Those tend to be mapped out by rangers. Even the parking lot they parked their car in can help. Anything to narrow down where the person might be. Had a woman on the line who was locked in a bedroom after getting into a physical fight with her boyfriend but had no idea where she was, and she was incredibly difficult to understand. I asked her if she was in a home or apartment. She said apartment. I told her to look out the window and tell me what she saw. She said a red car and a blue car, not much help there. So, I asked her how many stories the apartment complex had and she said 3. This was obviously not a lot to go on, so I finally asked what the last thing she remembers seeing before they pulled into the apartment complex, and she said a Target. I knew there was a Target just outside our jurisdiction and a couple of 3-story apartments near there, but one in particular that we got called out to regularly, so I dispatched police. Meanwhile, the boyfriend was beating down the door, literally, and was about to get in, so I knew it was urgent that we find her immediately. I hoped with all my heart that I sent police to the right place. When my officers pulled on scene, they reported seeing a red and a blue car, so I knew we were close, but we still didn't know which apartment. The boyfriend was about to burst in the room, so she hid under the bed, and when he finally broke down the door, I told her to run toward the front door and to scream as loud as she could. Which we're not really supposed to do, because if they get hurt after you give them an order, it can leave the PD liable. But she was frozen and needed help, and we needed to find her, or at least maybe someone would hear her scream and call us with an address. He came into the room. She slid out from under the bed and ran to the front door screaming. burst outside and my officers were right there. Turned out the reason she was so difficult to understand was because the bastard had knocked out her teeth. I've made a vague phone call before. Once, I was going into shock from a bee sting. I didn't know I was allergic until that moment. I attempted to call 911 and all I could manage was a hello. The operator asked me several pertinent questions but I couldn't remember my name or where I was, so after a few seconds of the operator asking if I was okay, I just hung up because I didn't know what to say. They called back and I went through the same process. I was scared because I knew I was in danger but my brain didn't know how to communicate that. Luckily, the person whose house I was at gave me some Benadryl and made the call for me. She saved my life. 911 dispatcher in VA here. As far as vague goes, probably when a passerby called about a man sitting on a curb looking lonely. No description of the male and no legit location. Caller, I'm sitting at an intersection here in town and I saw this guy. Me. Okay sir. Did the man appear to be in distress or suspicious in any way? Caller, no I don't think so. But he seemed really lonely. Me. Do you want me to send a unit to check his welfare? Caller, yes please. I mean, it may be nothing or he may be thinking about running into traffic and I think someone should talk to him. Me. Do you remember where you saw him? Caller, no. One a curb near my family member's house. Me. Okay. What's that address? Caller, gives address. Me. Any idea where in relation to the house? Caller, no. All the streets here look the same. I'm from out of town. Me. Do you have a description of the male? Is he WBH? What he is wearing? Caller, no. I didn't look at him really. I just drove by and looked lonely. Me. Bash his head against console. Not me, but heard of a case where a domestic violence victim called emergency and it went somewhat like this. 911, what's your emergency? Hi, I'd like to order pizza. You realize you've called emergency? Yes. Can I get a Super Supreme? 911 operator realizes what's going on. Are you under duress and unable to speak but you need police help? Yes, that's right. My address is X. How long until the pizza arrives? 10 minutes. The pizza didn't show but cops did, and the abusive boyfriend was separated from his knife. Got one where a lady reported that her neighbors were running an illegal taco stand. I have no idea what made it illegal, neither did she. The officers went and cleared immediately. It was a party. They were giving away free tacos. Not a 911 dispatcher but a taxi dispatcher in an area with a huge drug and alcohol problem. One night I started getting calls from helpful citizens who were calling a cab for a lady who was wandering around. She had just been beaten to a bloody pulp by her partner and dumped in a rural area. It was about 10 PM and she was walking up to strangers' houses. Thick long driveways and lots of forests. Pounding on their door until they answered and then asking them to call a cab for her. Not one of these people thought of calling 911 to get her an ambulance or the police, and they refused to give me their address for a pickup. A large amount of our customers are very secretive of their info, often refusing to give me their name, phone, address or destination. Vital info when ordering a cab. Just telling me the road she was walking around on. I kept telling the helpful homeowners that I couldn't send a cab unless I had an address to pick her up at, and all those people just sent this poor lady off into the night looking for more help. Every 15-20 minutes, for about 2 hours, I would get a familiar call from a different homeowner, telling me how bloody and badly beaten she was, then basically refusing to give me any info. I called the police to tell them what was going on, but without a name or address, they couldn't really do much. I never heard how it turned out. It was a very bad night. Guy called 911 and said there was a bomb at our local Walmart. Very small town, so we advised our officers and went through the standard procedure of advising Walmart and having them close the store. In the meantime, we called the phone company and did some tracking on the phone. Guy was fired from Walmart that day and was picked up for making a terroristic threat. Fucked his life up doing that. We get a slimmed down transcript of the call taker's conversation on our computers when a call gets dispatched. A ton of them are just caller requests ambulance to X location. No further information, which is fine because at least that they usually send a cop car along with us in case something sketchy is going on. Incorrect information is often way worse than no information because if it incorrectly comes over as something benign they send us alone and we can end up alone on a scene that we should have police assistance on. Last week I had a fall from standing height leg injury turn out to be a shooting with a huge crowd of sketchy people on scene. And not long before that we had an abdominal pain turn out to be a guy who got stabbed in the abdomen. Not a 911 operator, but was dispatched to a call of someone outside with a flashlight. Pretty vague equals. At first I read flashlight, that would most definitely be an interesting interaction. Sir, put the pocket pussy down and let's just talk about this. Don't make me use this.